Shalom, I'm Daniel Rose. I'm Director of Education at Koren Jerusalem. It was my privilege and honor to have been a student of Rabbi Sacks and to have worked with him over the last few years of his life before he tragically passed away, working on adapting his writings for a younger audience and for families to use. We're tremendously excited to be launching the Family Edition series, Covenant and Conversation on the Parasha in 2 volumes and Ceremony and Celebration on the Chagim in 1 volume. And today I'd like to share with you some ideas and features of the Ceremony and Celebration Family Edition for you to use for Hanukka. Before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about the vision of the series. For Rabbi Sacks, education, and specifically family education, was a core value in Judaism. Rabbi Sacks would often talk about the remarkable speech that Moshe Rabbeinu gave as he was leading the Israelites out of Egypt. He could have spoken about many things, such as the war that faced them in conquering the land of Israel, or the receiving of the Torah on Har Sinai, but instead he spoke about education. He spoke about the responsibility of every parent to be an educator. In fact, for Rabbi Sacks, the primary educational institution in the life of any Jewish child is the family, and the core primary educator is the parent. He wrote, "Their great institutions were the family and education via the conversation between the generations." And this series is a tool for families to use to have that intergenerational conversation. In fact, Rabbi Sacks often remarked that there's no Hebrew word for history. The modern Hebrew word for history is historia, which is really an English word. What we do have is we have zikaron, memory. And our chagim are a chance for us to transmit to the next generation our national memories. And the Ceremony and Celebration Edition is a tool for families to use to aid them in that transmission. In this video, we'd like to showcase the Ceremony and Celebration Family Edition, explore the educational elements that are contained in it, and show you how best you can use it as a resource to continue that intergenerational conversation. Let's take a look at Hanukka. Hanukka has resources for every night of the 8 nights of Hanukka. Let's first take a look at Rabbi Sacks' message for the 6th night of Hanukka. For each night of Hanukka, Rabbi Sacks gives us a message on Hanukka in our family edition. In this piece for the 6th night of Hanukka, Rabbi Sacks identifies 3 miracles that happen on Hanukka. We know about 2 of them: the physical battle, the Maccabees overcoming the odds against the Greek army, the miracle of the oil that burned for 8 nights. But he identifies a 3rd miracle. The 3rd miracle that Rabbi Sacks identifies from the Hanukka story came many years after the end of the Hanukka story. After the destruction of the temple, there was some disagreement about whether Hanukka should continue to be celebrated. While there was a strong opinion that said that we should no longer celebrate Hanukka because the temple was no longer in existence, the prevailing opinion was no, we should. Although the temple has been destroyed, Jewish hope has not been destroyed. And Rabbi Sacks quotes Od lo avda tikvatenu, the line from Hatikva, from Israel's national anthem, to personify the hope that the Jewish people always had that one day we would return to the land of Israel and rebuild that temple. And the miracle is that the Jews continue to celebrate Hanukkah and continue to be Jewish throughout all those thousands of years of exile. In the points to ponder, the questions that accompany this piece of writing from Rabbi Sacks, we ask, why do you think it is important to maintain festivals and remembrance days that commemorate historical events from generations ago? So this is a question that you could discuss with your children, and it taps into what we spoke about at the beginning of this video about the transmission of Jewish memory and of Jewish values through the Chagim. We continue to celebrate Hanukkah because we want our children, our next generation, to inculcate the values of Hanukkah and the values of Judaism and Jewish history and remember them as if they are their own memories. Question number 2, how does Hanukkah represent hope? Hope for what? And question number 3, what connections are there between Hanukkah and the modern state of Israel? All wonderful questions that you could sit with your children and discuss, and there's an educational companion at the end of each section that gives you some suggested answers of how to do that. Let me just spend a moment considering the 3rd question, the connection between Hanukkah and the state of Israel. For Rabbi Sacks, the state of Israel represents hope. He in fact termed Israel the home of hope. That's how he referred to Israel. And so the hope that he found in the Hanukka story is the hope that we still have today in the state of Israel. Today, still 75 years into the history of the state of Israel, we're still fighting for its very existence, but with hope in our hearts that we know that we will win this war and we will continue to live as Jews in our own homeland. The connections are obvious between Hanukka and Israel, and it's wonderful to find messages from Rabbi Sacks' writings that feel like he wrote them today for us today and what we're experiencing. The picture actually on the page 78, where we find this message, is of the menorah facing the Knesset in Jerusalem. And the menorah is actually the official state emblem of the Jewish state. Again, reaffirming this connection between Hanukka and the state of Israel. Another feature of every night of Hanukka in the family edition is a short quote from Rabbi Sacks from somewhere else in his writings that either speaks directly about Hanukka or presents a value or a message that connects to Hanukka in some way. I'd like to share with you the quote that we have here on page 65, a quote that's taken from Rabbi Sacks' celebrated book, A Letter in the Scroll.
I admire other civilizations and traditions and believe each has brought something special into the world. Aval zeh shalanu. But this is ours. This is my people, my heritage, my faith. In our uniqueness lies our universality. Through being what we alone are, we give to humanity what only we can give. This then is our story, our gift to the next generation. I received it from my parents and they from theirs, across great expanses of space and time. There's nothing quite like it. It changed and still challenges the moral imagination of humankind.
This beautiful quote from the last chapter in A Letter in the Scroll reflects on Judaism's unique contribution to the world and connects to Hanukka in that Hanukka was really a battle of civilizations. The Greeks wanted Jews to stop being Jewish, and the Jews refused. And the Jews felt that they have something unique to bring to the world. And Rabbi Sacks has tremendous respect for all cultures and all religions. Aval zeh shalanu. He tells a wonderful, wonderful story of a time when he was holidaying with his wife Elaine in Eilat in Israel, and he was on a glass-bottom boat in the Red Sea.
And we were the only people on the boat, and we were talking, and the captain of the boat came up to us very excitedly and said, "Atam me-Anglia, are you from England?" We said, "Yes, why do you ask?" He said, "I've just come from England. I've just been to a holiday in England." And we said, "How do you like it? How did you like it?" He said, "Wonderful. The buildings, so old. The grass, so green. The people, so polite." And then he looked around him, and in those days, Eilat was, just the desert, I have to tell you. And he looked around at these bare, barren, brown hills, and an enormous smile came over his face. And he said, "Aval zeh shalanu." But this is ours.
And that really reflects Rabbi Sacks' relationship both to Israel and also to Judaism and Jewish culture. There's beauty in other peoples and other places, but this belongs to us. And that perhaps is the message of Hanukka. And if you use the points to ponder together with the answers that I suggested to help you, this is a wonderful possible conversation you could have with your children on Hanukka. For every night of Hanukka, we included a story, either directly about Hanukka or in some way connected to Hanukka. Sometimes these stories are based on classical Jewish sources, and sometimes they're modern stories about Hanukka. I'd like to share with you on page 79 of the family edition a story that's a Midrash on Hanukka. I'll read it out very briefly for you now. In the days of the wicked kingdom of Greece, it was decreed upon the Jews that whoever had a bolt on his door must engrave upon it the words, "I have no portion or heritage in the God of Israel." Immediately, all the Jews went and pulled out all the bolts from their doors and discarded them. It was also decreed that whoever had an ox must write on its horn the words, "I have no portion or heritage in the God of Israel." Immediately, all the Jews went and sold all their oxen. So the question that we ask on this Midrash, how do these acts of defiance compare to the heroism of the Maccabees? So the Midrash is a beautiful, powerful Midrash that says, sometimes we're fighting a war. Sometimes it's the small acts of defiance that actually can win the war. We're feeling this now in Israel quite a lot, that while our Chayalim are really fighting the war, the whole of the population of Israel are doing their part in supporting them and helping them. In Hanukkah, the Greeks were trying to stamp out Jewish civilization, and these small acts of defiance were ways that families and peoples could say to the Greeks, no, we refuse to give in. We insist on maintaining our Judaism and our Jewish identity. I think this is a powerful message for us to share with our children, that even they, young children, can still be proud to be Jewish, and that in itself is a statement of faith and of hope. Now we get to the extra fun stuff. Every night of Hanukkah, we included a Hanukka challenge. Each night, a different kind of challenge, a quiz, or a visual game to play. Let me share 3 with you now, just to give you a taster. On page 58, we have Hanukka anagrams. My particular favorite from this one is number 4, became sack. What do you think that might be? Well, luckily for you, all the answers are in the book. I will just tell you that became sack is the Maccabees. My particular favorite is on page 67, the Hanukka scavenger hunt. We have a beautifully illustrated image with several Hanukkah-related objects for you to find, a little bit like a Where's Waldo activity. I will tell you also there are some bonus items for you to search for. Some of those are the titles of Rabbi Sacks' books. I'll leave that to you, but why don't we just have a quick look and see. We mentioned the menorah outside the Knesset, connecting Hanukkah to the state of Israel. So that menorah is found somewhere in this image. Can you find it? Finally, let's take a look at the Hanukka challenge on page 76, spot the difference. And the reason why this is a good one to mention now is because there are many different types of educational elements in the Ceremony and Celebration Family Edition. Some are only going to be for older children, for teenagers, but some are definitely good for younger children. And this is a great example of an activity that you can do for Hanukkah in the book that you can do with your younger children. Let's take a look and see what differences we can find. Every night of Hanukkah has its own fun fact, some short factoids that's something fun and interesting to think about. Let me just share one with you. In December of 1993, Space Shuttle Endeavour was sent into space to service the Hubble Space Telescope. One of the astronauts was Jewish, Jeffrey Hoffman, and knowing he'd be in space for Hanukkah, he took with him a Hanukkiah and a dreidel so he could celebrate. What's interesting though is there's no gravity in space, so he couldn't really light the Hanukkiah, and playing dreidel up there was also quite a challenge. Thank you for joining me for this exploration of the Ceremony and Celebration Family Edition. To get the full experience, make sure you get yourself a copy from your local Jewish bookstore or from korenpub.com. Hanukka Sameach.